People will call this junk, and at the moment it is. But I'm going to turn an unpopular product, aka a Tyco steamer, into an unpopular locomotive from a popular railroad, next on Psycho for Tyco.
From Tyco, of course.
Alright friends, I've been given sort of a Facebook challenge, which is why I've stopped on the fire station, although I know somebody was going to say, oh, all those cracks and everything, so I just wanted to do this real short. I'm putting some putty on this and shaping that. I'll be repainting that, but the hose drying tower is not our main concern, nor is our warning siren. I have been given a challenge. Now, if you've seen in one of my earlier videos, I turned a sow's ear into something that wasn't a sow's ear, but not a silk purse. This time I've been given a massive challenge, and that's why you're seeing this very decrepit looking Tyco steamer in front. I'm going to make this into Virginia and Truckie's last and newest steam locomotive on their fleet, which was locomotive number 5. So let's do a quick run back of former Nevada Copperbelt number 5, which turned into Virginia and Truckee number 5, and why nobody models it. Virginia and Truckee's second number 5 was never a popular locomotive. Unfortunately, not with the fans, and really not with the railroad. Purchased by the V&T in 1947 from the Nevada Copperbelt Railroad, the number 5 would toil on for the next 3 years, substituting in for locomotive number 27 and 26 on the final runs from Reno to Minden. Tracks originally built for the lighter stepping 46010 wheelers were not favorable for the heavier 280 consolidation, and unfortunately number 5 was really hard on the rails, according to many accounts that I've been able to read. In the final year of operation, locomotive number 27 was taken out of service, and a month before the end of the railroad, number 26 succumbed to a fire at the Reno engine house. But number 5 would not be immortalized as a locomotive making the last run, as an emergency order made number 27 do V&T's final run on the tracks, with number 5 finally just bringing up the scrap trains to pull up the rails, and also only to star in a couple of movies. For about a year, or maybe 2, locomotive number 5 sat in Reno's yard, rusting away, not finding a buyer in the age of diesel, and just one day the locomotive faded into obscurity, going to a scrapyard in Pittsburgh, California, where she was cut up and probably made into razor blades. The locomotive, which only saw 3 short years on the railroad, never gained popularity with the fans and was rarely photographed. I was lucky to find these. And as far as in model form, the number 5 is not represented in any model form, except for a very close replica of a 282 that's made by Northwest Shortline that's about $500. Okay, and we're back. So, here's the thing. I was doing a little research, and as I said in the intro, nobody does a model of V&T number 5. It was a pretty unpopular locomotive, not only with the fans, but with the railroad itself. However, these are the things I have found out from what little research I can find on this locomotive, and why I'm using a Tyco to do this correctly. First of all, we've got the correct length on this, so that's a good thing. Correct length, somewhat the correct height, so we can work with this. The drivers are the same, so we've got all that. Now, here's the 2 big problems that we have. Okay, First of all, the cab's going to be wrong, so I have to get a different cab for this, and I think I know where I'm going to be able to find it. And the domes are wrong. However, this all can be fixed, and we're going to go ahead and fix it. We're going to put a spark arrestor on the top of the stack to raise that up. We're going to get rid of these domes, and we're going to replace them with the correct domes. We have to move a few parts around. I've got a different drive system with this. Or I've got different pistons for this. Different pistons. I've got the one with the correct gears. That's what I'm getting at. So I got the one with the correct gears, with a reciprocating gear and all that. This type of drive system I'm going to be using in another I can use Tyco for whatever I want project. The other problem is this firebox in the back is grossly huge. I can fix all this. We'll just go ahead and we'll reposition the boiler, cut this off. We'll grind down the domes here, and we will put on more correct domes. We're going to have to move the steam generator to the front. Obviously a cab, and I've got all sorts of other parts. And then comes the real fun part. This thing's going to have to be a locomotive drive. So we're going to all do this step by step, bit by bit. And my goal for this challenge is to have this up and running by the home show when the Carson City Railroad Administration, Railway, my model railroad club. When my model railroad club runs, I'm going to actually have a number 5 that people are going to go, and they're going to go, hey, wasn't that V&T's last locomotive? Now, I got a couple other what-ifs that I'm doing on this. As I did more reading into the demise of the V&T, there were 2 plans that were put forth. Actually, no, 3 plans. 3 plans that were put forth. One of the plans was, instead of buying number 5, they were going to buy a GE 70-ton locomotive, which would have been really super cool to see. I'm kind of doing a 70-ton locomotive because I've got all the parts from other projects to go ahead and make one. So I'm already in the midst of doing V&T number 6, which would have been the diesel locomotive, which I'm still kind of working on how to justify that. And when you justify like proto-freelance, you really got to do your research into that. Most of my research, if most of you know, is into a modern Tonopah Tidewater. So that's been my biggest headache. But yeah, I'm doing research into a proto-freelance. What if the V&T was actually able to survive past May 1950? The other proposal to save the railroad was that the 3 counties that the railroad worked in, I forget the county that Minden is in, but basically Minden, Carson City, Reno, they wanted to do a last-ditch attempt at purchasing the railroad to preserve it and to keep operations. Even in the last days of the V&T, the railroad wasn't profitable, but it was getting by. And the biggest problem with the railroad and with them purchasing number 5 is the rails really needed to be rehabilitated at the time. And from the research I found, and I hate to say it, but the book on the V&T is kind of wrong, because they said, oh, well, you know, the owners just decided to abandon it. Well, the owners didn't decide to abandon the railroad. They had to abandon the railroad, because when they told the 3 counties, okay, yeah, you want to try and buy us, this is what it's going to cost, it became too cost prohibitive. They had to completely re-upgrade the track. They had to fix a few of the curves, because 5 was not really a pleasurable locomotive to work with because of the wheel configuration. So that was another proposal, but like I said, it was cost prohibitive, especially for 1950. And the final one that I found out about was that the Western Pacific had opted to purchase the whole railroad. The problem was they had to build a crossover in Reno across the Southern Pacific. And even though the Southern Pacific and the V&T had an interchange in Reno, there was still animosity towards the little railroad, as well as animosity towards the Western Pacific. And the SP simply said, nope, you can't build a crossover, you can't build a flyover, you can't run the few miles on our track from Reno Junction into Reno. No, it's not going to happen. And it's kind of funny to hear, when I was reading about this on Facebook, the whole, well, you know, if the Western Pacific had bought the V&T, the V&T would have lost its, you know, charming Old West ideology and all that. People don't seem to realize, when you look at the roster, that when the Western Pacific was planning to purchase the railroad, there were only 2 locomotives on the line that were operational, 26 and 5. So how would the railroad have lost its Old West charm? This is something I don't understand. Anyways, I'm rambling, and I've been rambling for about 8 minutes now. So let's get started by fixing up this boiler and getting this all set up and prepped for new domes. Okay, first of all, I don't even remember where I got this from. I think I found it in a pile of, you know, parts or something like that when I made my move. But here's a few things I already found out right out about this one. The screw was rusted in, so I had to use a pair of pliers to get it off out of the smoke unit. This drive system's frozen up, like completely frozen up. This is the lead sled right here. I'm not worried about that. That's going into another project. That'll be a Tonopah Tidewater locomotive. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the parts that we have to redo. Obviously, one of the first things is going to be getting rid of the smoke box. I've got 2 of these. I actually think I got 3 of these, so I should be able to work that. This whole portion has got to become a boiler. So that's going to be an interesting cut and splice, but we're going to make it happen. Ooh, what's this? It's interesting. I do this work and I find pieces, you know, that just kind of roll around. I have no idea what that is. Right now, at this point, we're just going to work with the domes. Now, here's going to be the plus and minus of the domes. First of all, the domes are hollow. These are going to be very wide to put the new domes in, but we're going to be doing it. We're going to be making it work. The other thing, and let's see if we can zoom in here. I think that's all the zoom I've got. Oh yeah, that is all the zoom I've got. So let me just bring this up here. Okay, we've got a plate over the dome. So this is going to help us out a little bit here, because we can build another plate on that. And the steam generator on the back here is a separate piece. So we can go ahead and replace that. So we're going to go ahead. We're not going to wash this yet. We're we're just going to go ahead. We're going to cut down the domes. We're going to cut off the, well, even the whistles I think are a separate piece. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to pop any of the top details off here, which is like the whistles and the dome, or the whistles and the steam generator. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to Dremel down our domes a little bit so that we can fit in the new domes once they get in. Alright, so real quick, as I said before, they just kind of pop in. These were kind of glued in, so I just took my broken screwdriver here, chipped off the edges, popped these off. Now we've got room for our Dremel, because we're just going to grind and cut these down a little bit, and then we'll sand and file for the domes. Okay, that really didn't take that long for me, and it was shorter for everybody else. So here's what I did. I used the cutting disc, and this is a carbide cutting disc for my Dremel, to obviously cut down the domes to a point to where I could use this sanding block to get them down. Now I'll be using a sander, sanding stick of various sizes just to get these things down to the plates. Then we'll cover the plates, and I'm waiting on the domes to show up for that. Here on the firebox, I've already begun to lower it, and then I'm going to use the sander again so that I can bring it all the way up to the walkway here, leaving this for the cab. And then we're going to go ahead and add piping and things like that in here. And how I'm going to convert that is I'm going to trim down a piece of this, and I'm going to put it on, I'm going to file and fit it obviously on here, so I've got more boiler and less firebox. So I just wanted to give you an update. Now, one of the things you're always going to get, especially when you're cutting and sanding, is what I like to call plastic goop. And that's just because these things run at such a high speed, part of it melts. That's just a byproduct. But because of that, and because of the plastic, you're going to get a lot of this goop covering up where your cuts are. So, you know, just stop every now and then. And of course, in the middle of all this, even though I am doing a challenge of making this into a Virginia trucky locomotive, which the more I work on it, the more I see, yeah, it can be done. This is the beauty of Tyco's 280 and 080, which, doing a little digging, I found it was actually of an earlier Mantua project. These things are complete bare bones USRA. So these kind of were designed of a USRA style, which, if you know anything about the United States Railway Administration, which was formed shortly after America's entry into World War I, was to design a standardized steam locomotive. So each class of locomotive under the white wheel arrangement system had to follow a certain standard. Was this always followed? No. I've seen so many post USRA, or, you know, USRA period locomotives that obviously had different things done. They had, you know, different domes added on. They had different firebox arrangements, different wheel arrangements. You know, all of this was like customized. So it really didn't work out as well as the United States Railway Administration planned. But it, like I'm trying to get to, because this is a bare bones design, this is very good for detailing super detailing and customizing, which really makes Tyco great for this. And in this day and age, and this is how I look at it, and I apologize in advance if I kind of offend anybody on this, but this is what, in my opinion, separates the model railroader from a model train enthusiast. See, a model train enthusiast, he'll buy a super detailed $400 locomotive that's already done. Whereas a model railroader will take something like Tyco and say, this is very close to XYZ's railroad locomotive. It's not perfect. However, comma, if I go ahead and attack it with a saw, a Dremel, and a whole bunch of putty, I think I can make this into something. And we're doing that right now. So I just want to take a quick break, and I'm getting right back at it. Okay, so when I was putting this on, found a couple of goofs. One, I had cut really close to this, so it was kind of fragile. And the other is I didn't trim this down far enough, so I've got some big gaps. We're going to trim up this firebox a little bit, so I've got a different attachment under my Dremel. I'm going to bring this down a little bit, and then we'll just fill that in with some sheet styrene, and we'll go from there. And as I've seen on the timer with my editing, I'm at the end here, so I'll just show you real quick what I did, and then you'll have to wait 2 weeks until we continue on, and I have to wait for the domes anyway. So I've got my firebox and my boiler all set. I was able to find a cab from a Southern Pacific mogul that I mentioned in earlier videos I was going to DCC up. It didn't work out right, so I'm just using that for parts. I'm going to have to play with the cab a little bit, and then of course we're going to have to get the spark arrestor. But the domes are ready, the boiler's ready, the cab is ready. Now we're just going to have to figure out on how we're going to power this. I've come up with another idea between brakes. The other thing I had to do, and I decided to use this as a test, is the boiler's got to sit a little lower. It's got to be a little more squat. So with our lead sled here, I went ahead and I lowered the boiler saddle, and I cut off these to see if that would look right. It looks right. So with our new drive, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that. And yeah, then we're going to be talking about powering options, and that'll be next on Psycho for Tyco. Hey friends, thanks for watching the video. I know you're at the end, but if you like this video, just remember, every 2 weeks I'm going to be bringing out a new video on budget model railroading, the history of Tyco trains, the history of other model railroad companies, and some how-to things that maybe you've never learned before, or you've known and you want to share with your friends but you never knew how. Well, here's the way. All you got to do on this video is like, share, subscribe, and if you want notifications, hit the little bell there, which I still don't know how to do, but we'll figure it out eventually. But until then, hey, we'll see you in the next video, and I am Psycho for Tyco.